This Sunday marks 70 years since the town of Darwin was bombed by Japanese forces during World War II. On the 19th of February 1942, Japanese planes attacked in 2 deadly raids. For the first time this year, the anniversary of the bombing is a national day of observance, and that recognition is uncovering some forgotten wartime stories. Alison Middleton reports.
G'day Norman, how you doing mate?
Good
to see you.
Nice to
For Norm McMahon and Max Cathro, this is an emotional journey.
I got the wounds to prove it.
A return to the top end where they were stationed as signalmen during World War II.
Because you got the Star of the Pacific,
Yeah,
and we didn't. And yet
I was there.
It was here that they witnessed a series of devastating Japanese air attacks.
that was very scary. I don't mind telling you. A loud explosion, lots of dust and debris flying around.
The first air raid on the 19th of February 1942 took Darwin by surprise. It came less than 3 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor and 4 days after the fall of Singapore. The Japanese launched 188 planes from aircraft carriers, and bombs rained down on the harbour and town.
We lost 10 ships, around 250 people, 30 aircraft, and chaos resulted. Oil all over the water, smashed and burning buildings, people dead and dying, and they came back 2 hours later and bombed the runways flat.
It's the only time in Australian history when we've felt the whole impact of modern war.
There was a total lack of leadership. There was no organisation beforehand and there was no leadership on the day. And that's a simple formula for chaos.
That first raid left much of the town in ruins.
The whole idea was to close Darwin down as a port and to deny us the ability to attack the newfound Indonesian empire that they'd managed to establish in the north.
A direct hit took out the Darwin post office. 10 people were killed. Telegraph supervisor Archibald Halls sent the last message to Adelaide before the Japanese attacked. A minute later, he was dead.
They all got into a trench, but he was the last person in there.
Nice to be in Darwin.
Archibald Hall's grandson, Hugh McGarry, has travelled to Darwin with his wife Ruth to see the place where his grandfather died. A memorial in the Northern Territory Parliament marks the spot where the post office once stood.
It's actually important to remember our history. On Anzac Day we remember acts of gallantry, but what civilians did up here, as well as the military, is just tremendous, actually. Equal acts of gallantry and bravery. Office of the British Australian Telegraph Company.
It's Hugh McGarry's first trip to Darwin from South Australia. It's a journey that has special meaning for him.
I mean, they died so that we might have a future in a free country. So I think that's really important, to be inspired by those people that went before us.
On the 70th anniversary of the first bombing raids, the nation is paying tribute to those who died in Darwin. In the days after the bombing, the official death toll was just 17. Historians say many Australians are only now becoming aware of what happened all those years ago.
And there's been so much written about it over the years, and yet Australians still seem to be generally ignorant of what happened here on that day. I think it's perhaps a sign that we're over the horizon, out of sight for most Australians.
I think it takes time to seep into the psyche of people down south. They didn't know about it then. It was minimised, the damage that was inflicted on the 19th of February, after that, to a small degree, although it seeped into the papers and so on. And Australia's a very big place. Darwin's a long way away. Eric, fantastic to see you.
Oh, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Historian Tom Lewis and veteran Eric Thompson have recorded one of the little-known stories of the war.
And here is the brains of the ship.
An Australian warship like this one went to battle with a Japanese submarine a month before Darwin was bombed.
This is where I was in this room.
When the submarine attacked the ship.
Eric Thompson was a gunnery officer on that warship, HMAS Deloraine.
We were refuelling when the signal came through that the Japanese fleet were in the area.
The torpedo would have come from this direction.
When the Japanese sub tried to torpedo the ship, Deloraine sank the sub outside Darwin Harbour.
HMAS Deloraine charged straight down the track of the torpedo and it surfaced in front of them. And the half surfacing was accompanied by depth charging from Deloraine. And they knew they'd killed the first Japanese submarine in World War II. And still there with all of its 80 Japanese crew on board.
Decades later, sentiment towards the enemy has softened.
For a long time when the war was over, we hated the Japanese, and particularly as my second elder brother was a prisoner of war of the Japanese. It didn't make me like them very much, but of course I've come to realise that we've got to love them now.
Last year, the United States President Barack Obama came to Darwin to pay tribute to American servicemen who died on board the USS Peary, which was sunk during the first bombing raid.
In a sense, it was here, in Darwin, where our alliance was born, during Australia's Pearl Harbor.
It's the first time, the first place that the Americans fought alongside us in World War II was here. And the Americans fought with us for the rest of the war. And it was a great partnership and it remains so today.
Historians believe the events of 70 years ago have growing relevance today, given Australia's ongoing defence relationship with the United States.
It needs to be remembered that we are still Australia's front line up here. And I think that we need that constant reminder, that we are not safe. We're not an island, inside little island that can sit back and let the world take care of itself.
This year, for the first time, the 19th of February will be known as Bombing of Darwin Day. It's hoped the National Day of Observance will ensure what happened in Darwin is never forgotten.
Well, I think it's a historic occasion, but it was suppressed and it stayed suppressed all these years. It's not taught in schools. And if this ceremony here is well publicised throughout Australia, which it looks as though it's going to be, it might start things moving.